The Briefing, brought to you by P&A Grant Thornton, where we decode the essentials of professional services and beyond. Each month, we will bring you professional advice, compelling stories, and practical tips from our homegrown experts. So, whether you're just starting out or sharpening your edge, this is your briefing for success. With us today are Ree Girmendonk, People and Culture Group Director, Richard Ibarra, Tax Advisory and Compliance Director, and Thia Creencia, Manager of the Knowledge Management Group. Welcome to the briefing. So, for our first episode, we want to discuss the hard and human skills fresh graduates need to know before entering the accounting field. Okay, so Ree, Thea, and Richard, let me ask you this. What makes an accounting student hireable, or an accounting graduate hireable? First, Ree.
So hello, dear panelists, Miss Mike. All right, so maybe I could focus on maybe the top 5 things, a combination of things that makes a person hireable. It doesn't matter whether it's accounting; it's generally, in a sense, hireable across all different skill sets. Would be number one. It's the technical advantage that you have. So it really plays a lot that you have the necessary skills and training and certifications even for you to do the job, because that's usually the first step wherein they would look whether or not you would be able to fit to do the job. Number 2, specific to accounting perhaps, would be that sense of integrity and
So yung first is
ethics.
baseline.
Yeah, the baseline.
Baseline. Okay.
So normally, at least from HR, we look at it from the perspective of what's the base and then what could be, nice to have, but still necessary in the job, which is number 1, again, the technical skills, and you move towards the ethics, the integrity part, communication skills, being able to articulate the things. Because when you're dealing in a professional scene, you use terms, languages that are not really just specific or monogamous to the profession. You have to talk to people, etc. So communication is also important. And perhaps number 3, what makes you hireable is, being able to really carry yourself in any conversation.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you may be the smartest person in the room, but if you don't know really how to reach out, communicate, and collaborate, that would really show during interview.
And so you, Richard, I know you're also teaching in a university.
Thank you, Ms. Mai. As me as a hiring manager, I always look on 2 items. Number 1 is the technical skills, and I think the most important is the attitude. I think it is given that all accounting students have the technical knowledge, but I think it's more on how they can mingle, how can they dwell in the work environment. I think that's the most important thing, the attitude toward at workplace.
How do you assess that during interview?
Usually you ask a questions, a scenario situation where you can test whether the applicant would drive on the working environment that you have.
Yeah, situations. Okay, so Thea,
I would like to answer that question by looking at the challenges being faced right now by our applicants or our newly graduate students. And I think it comes with understanding really what they can and acknowledging what they can't do. Again, it boils down to attitude as well. The character, that they have to be like the baseline character and competencies they should have upon hire that we from the professional services organization like P&A Grant Thornton can really teach. Say, for example, initiative, adaptability, and ownership. And having all those 3 together can create that commitment to learning, I guess, because they have to acknowledge that they come without experience. So when they take advantage opportunities, if ever that they get hired, that they should really immerse themselves in that learning process. Another thing I think that they should look for would be a great foundation of internship. Because remember, they don't come with experience; they only come with knowledge. And considering they can't really have that natural experiential learning, they have to find opportunities wherein they can really test their knowledge, and that is finding a very good offering for internship.
So Richard, let me ask you, we know that training, school works, and maybe some organizations are just part of the puzzle for aspiring accountants looking to enter in the workforce. But it's more important to find out how graduates can effectively transition from school to the working environment. So, your thoughts on that?
I think one of the good gauge is to check how they think in a particular situation. For example, you give a good example, a real life situations, what happening in the business, and then this is the problem, and then you ask them or challenge them how they could come up with a better solution. So it is also a similar practice in the academy where they given a case study. So this time, this is a real actual situation.
Real world.
Yes.
Real world.
So it's a matter of testing their technical skills plus the values that has they instilled in themselves.
Okay. So how about you, Ree, as an HR practitioner? Can you share with us some specific example on how a fresh graduate can successfully transition or has successfully transitioned from school to the workforce?
Maybe I'm gonna put it this way. For people, the observation or the key observation is how they were able to use the leverage that they have in schools to form a better bridge to transition to practical applications. Case in point, are you a participant, let's say, of any organizations? Did you try to run for councilship? Did you do something like varsity? You know, anything that you use to your leverage to improve yourself. Therefore, when you step into practical, it's easier. Even down to your commitment to learning. Are you rigid enough to just stay in school, or you're trying to get a hold of what's recent and new? Let's talk about AI. That's a classic example. For example, in school, that's not really taught, right? Come in the employment, then AI booms. Is it the only time we start teaching or learning? No, it starts from school. Therefore, what I'm trying to say is that technology is one, that you would see the shift from schooling to practical application, especially in the industry that you're in. All the advancements, you know, it's not making you guys obsolete, but it's making your profession more efficient, right? So that ability to transition from theories to practical, it's very necessary. Baseline may be technical, but at the end of the day, it gets you to the door. But what makes you enter the business is your ability to carry yourself. So it's the human side, basically. So that even in itself is the transition, right? So when at work, do you carry yourself confidently? But you wouldn't be able to do that if you were not able to practice in, practice in school. So I guess those are just my two examples mainly wherein I see that shift from schooling down to employment.
Yeah. So it's not all about what you've learned in school.
Exactly.
But it's how you applied it. In my era, we call it descarte. How do you react or act in a certain situation? Ano yung descarte mo? Okay, Thia, as a trainer, how can students bridge the gap from theoretical?
From experience, I would say that they have to take advantage of the knowledge of the experts whom they have a chance to deal with. It may be in the form of entering or joining organizations, or even sitting down with their professors and asking what's the real world would look like, or investing time in participating in events, for example, offered by firms or any organization for that matter, so that they get to really see how the reality is. I know it's a synthetic way of filling in the experiential learning or the job application component, but still it gives them that preview of what they're going to experience when they're in the real world. And I think also it prepares them emotionally. Our younger generation nowadays, they like to feel confident about stuff, and the moment they don't feel confident, they would start to back down a bit, and I think that would increase that confidence because there's that sneak peek of, hey, this is what's going to happen, so I have to prepare for this.
Yeah, there's an anticipation of what will happen. Thia, you have a very good article in From Where We Sit. Okay,
Thank you,
I'm
ma'am.
gonna read it. You mentioned in that article, it was published in May. You said, today, accountants are indispensable advisors requiring a comprehensive skill set that transcends numerical expertise to include human soft skills. Can you tell us more about these soft skills and how important they are in accounting profession?
Um, it's actually a very broad discussion, and I would like to probably summarize it by saying that it is like almost everything that's not just technical knowledge. It may be emotional intelligence, it may be communication, like just like what our co-panelist mentioned. It may be about just the simple courage to learn or that belief of continuous learning. So anything that's not technical, I would, categorize it as human or soft skills. It is very important because I think we have seen a lot of people who are really great technically, but not all of them succeed in the real world simply because they lack that human or
Human
soft
skill.
skills. And it's an early realization that students in the accounting field should actually acknowledge as early as possible. I was actually an accountant in my first year.
Oh.
Yes, and I shifted. My bad. And now here I am. And right now I realize that it's probably one of the most important professions there is, and I missed my opportunity to be in that field.
But you are in accounting
right
firm?
now
Yeah.
as an
Good enough.
economist.
Close enough.
Close enough. Yeah, I took economics, but it's really a very important profession. So nurturing themselves as early as possible would really help them succeed, in our field, and would allow us to produce great accountants in the future.
So, Ree, in your more than 20 years in HR practice,
Why do we have to mention it? We're mentioning
In HR
ages now.
practice, can you tell us how the hiring process has adapted properly to assess both the technical and soft skills, or Thea call it human skills? How do you do that?
Yeah, maybe to put it lightly, the ability to holistically view people nowadays has become more sophisticated and multidimensional. I'm gonna put it that way. To give a case, hiring 20 years ago, since you pointed it out, hiring 20 years ago, all you have would be a resume or a CV. Right now, you have a multitude of assessments that you could do. Situational based assessments, or SBTs, is what you could do for simulations. You put real life scenario questions to your potential candidates, and you do the what if scenarios. You have behavioral assessments wherein you put a gauge on where they sit in the spectrum of things that you would like to have as an employer. Perhaps number 3, we have more extensive screening assessments for people, be it mental, physical. Before it's just basic APE. Now, even down to your mental abilities, you would be tested. And only because, our ability or the market in itself has become highly competitive, that you really have to have good gauges on who fits the role that you would like for your team. So I'm gonna put it there and leave it to the rest. Maybe they have some more. But
Yeah.
it has become really sophisticated, especially now with the AI tools.
That means
Again,
that soft skills is being gauged by that.
everything. There is science now to everything.
Okay,
So it's
okay.
not like when you ask a question, so how adaptable are you? It's not positioned that way anymore. There are screening tests. Even let's say if your organization is mature enough to adopt certain technologies that could parse your resume, they already pre-detect how likely you are to fit the job. So imagine the ease and convenience of actually putting people into roles just because you have the advancements at your hand.
Okay, so we know that soft skills, we all agree that soft skills is important. How is that taught in school? Turo ba yun? Is that taught in school, Richard?
Actually, I normally encourage my student to get outside the classroom, meaning to join in an organization, an academic organization, or any clubs that would enhance their skills. Because in joining an academic organization, like for example, JP, the people skills can be learned. And that's also an opportunity for them to deal with other people. Because different people means a different stroke.
Yeah.
So it's not just important that you know how to compute, you don't just know how to prepare the financial statement, but it is important how you communicate and how you deal not only with your workers but with your clients. So I think that's the most important thing
Yeah.
in adding the technical skills, soft skills.
Yes, because that's the real world.
Yes.
As you communicate, just like what Rhea has mentioned.
You don't
a
exist
while
on your
ago.
own.
Yes. Okay, so aside from soft skills, let's move on to busting common myths associated with the accounting profession. So, Ree, can you name some of them? Why are
Some.
they just myths?
Oh yeah, first myth would be that accounting is all math, or you have to be good at math. Wherein in fact accounting is that you have to be good in logic and English even.
Yeah.
You know, being able again to
To
eloquently, because again your position as advisors, right? You are a partner in the business. And therefore as a partner in the business, we just don't need the nerds and the geeks of math. We need people who would be able to tie it all up, make sense of it. And the most difficult part is putting it down to to the level of understanding of the people who are not accountants, and that takes skill
Yeah.
and a lot of emotional quotient, to be able to do that. Number two, perhaps, is that accounting is static. When I say that, maybe this is something that I learned myself joining the firm. In my mind, when I wasn't here yet, for me, accounting was quite static. I think it was all about financial statements, etc. And then I came here, and there's a depth and breadth of the things that you guys do. So it's really, having that appreciation. That's how much scope. So it's similar to HR, right? And the tendency is the more that you don't know, tendency is the more that you put it into like a very static profession. And now that I'm here, I have more deeper
know that it's not.
understanding. It's not.
It's not.
It's not the same
Definitely not.
skill set that we
Yeah.
hire. So even before I was saying, as long as they're CPAs. Oh no, not because they're CPAs, they're the
Yes.
same. So maybe I'm gonna. That would be my top two myths at least.
Yeah, okay. I remember a friend when they asked, bakit ka nag-accountancy? Kasi magaling ako sa math. So it's not
It's
anymore.
It helps, but it's
Yeah.
not. Yeah.
It helps, but it's not. So Richard, those misconceptions, how's that addressed in school?
Ako, every time that I hear na, why you took up accounting? Because I want to sign. Bakit gusto mo pumirma? Kasi yayaman ako.
Pirma lang, they said.
But I always tell to my student that when you sign, it's couple of responsibility.
Yeah, yeah.
So, accounting is dealing with business finance, but we have to consider as well that accounting is giving us an important facts or data for the management to come up with a good sound judgment.
Yeah,
So I think accounting is more of a responsibility rather than earning a lot of money.
Profession.
And while having that responsibility, you earn.
Yes.
That's the idea.
That's the idea.
That's the goal po.
So
Last time
it's
I
not
checked.
just signing it, but every signature is coupled by that responsibility. So anything you'd like to share?
I think we almost
Discussion.
mentioned the most important misconceptions, but probably just highlighting one would be they probably think that accounting is just you're stuck there in
That's
your
job.
yeah, and just doing, but yeah, it will require a lot of people interaction. So going back to the need for soft skills and human skills.
Yeah. So it starts in school. So universities should be able to to bridge that. But if doesn't happen in the university, so it's your responsibility now because they are
The
already
burden
here.
of responsibility.
The the responsibility is now transferred to us because they're already here. So how do we address that in the office?
At P&A Grant Thornton, I would have to say that we have a very robust people development framework. I know that maybe there are a bit of challenges in some areas, but we have a very strong framework, and that framework helps us supplement the training that they need so that they can adjust in our presence because we don't have a choice, they're already here. And we have a lot of development programs as well, and they're not just limited to professional skills, other than of course the technical skills also that are trained even further with the different practice areas. But yeah, a combination of all those training programs that we have. We also have coaching and mentoring, of course, which would help a lot of bridging in terms of all the gaps that we may have the responsibility to fill. And of course, we have our performance management system, which at the end of the day, it gauges how well our training programs are being implemented, and after that, we can then analyze the results again and work some interventions to help them really succeed in their current role or in the potential roles that they will get.
Yeah, so it's really a process. It starts from school. You try to teach that in school, whatever, how to bridge the gap from school to
Actual.
workforce to actual. Then it goes to Ree for the
Opening the door.
opening the door, trying to enter the
Create
door.
more doors and
Create more
windows.
doors, but the system is not perfect.
Yeah.
That's why Thia naman is here to make sure that whatever is lacking to our hires, we would fill it because we want to look at each individual, individually to assess them individually. It's not a one size fits all.
Targeted.
Yeah. So I think that's what's good at P&A Grant Thornton. We look at the individual development program of each hire. Of each
Holistically.
employee. Holistically. So before we end this episode, what advice can you give to our fresh graduates who are looking for a job opportunity? I'll start with you, Chard.
I think, ma'am, the moment that you leave the academe, it's important for you to have a good network. So I think it's also a good opportunity for the potential accounting applicant to enlarge themselves by joining PICPA, for example. That's a good organization. And also, it's also important that you have to look for a good mentor because your mentor will teach you how things to be done and be able to enjoy and to learn things more if you have a good mentor.
So network and
Mentor.
good mentor. Okay, how about you, Thea?
I think I would like to come full circle to what I said earlier. I know we have already established that there's really great importance in terms of honing their human skills, but also having that growth mindset is really important. Being determined and really hardworking, continuously tapping all learning opportunities that they can tap, may it be in school or from different organizations offering any free learning or courses. Just take advantage of them. And ultimately, I think they should take the courage, be confident of the things that they have, and acknowledge what they don't have. And putting them all together, I think, will help them really adjust better in the real world.
Ree?
Three things that I usually say. Research the organization you're applying for. You just don't go apply and then not knowing anything about the company because it must align with your values, and the more that you are aligned with your values and organizations, the likelihood of you getting noticed would be higher. That's one. Number two, perhaps, is just target your CV to actually align it with the posting. Remember, you're coming in with 1,000 of applicants, right? So what makes your CV stand out there is laziness sometimes, that you tend to just submit the same resume over and over again. But the reality there is, as long as you don't see, especially if the organizations, by the way, that you're applying for do parsing, they use the keywords to fit you in the roles.
Okay.
So if you're not really, putting more effort in terms of aligning your CV, it's not gonna happen. And do polite persistence, I guess. When I say that, sometimes they tend to be very aggressive in getting, feedback, and it's quite disruptive if I put it lightly. So you have to do polite persistence. And maybe finally, during the interview process, remember the word STAR. Situation, task, action, result. Even if you're not asked by the interviewer, but when you respond, always position it in STAR. You're gonna do great in
So
the
that's
interview.
situation,
Task, action, result.
action, result. Oh, okay. So I've gathered, I think, the most important thing for me is that purging. So you don't just send resumes.
Yep.
Because there's
Tailor
a
it every time.
Tailor it. You tailor it. Just send resume, like 20 resumes to 20 organizations. Most likely, there's a tendency to be purged.
Yeah. And most often than not, the bigger organizations would use tools already for the basic screening process. So you really have to match it with yours. So it's gonna pop up and put your name up in the list again, at least.
Oh, okay. Unlike before, just send biodata.
Yeah. In a very templated, and then one by one picture.
One by one picture.
With the name.
Now it's very different. Okay, and I'll remember STAR. So again, thank you so much, Ree, Richard, and Thia, for that very insightful discussion. And we look forward to another episode of The Briefing.